Welcome, everyone. My name is Glenn McMahon. I'm the publisher and editor at Upriver Press. We're an independent press based in Colorado. Our purpose is to publish books that are written by leading scholars in lots of different areas. Most of our authors have PhDs, including our guest tonight. But our purpose is to publish this scholarly work in ways that both maintain intellectual integrity and solid research, but also in a way that's accessible to a broader audience. And we think that in our post-truth times that are so full of conspiracy theories and misinformation and disinformation, we think it's more important than ever to help scholars and experts share their research with more people. You can learn more about us at upriverpress.com, which is on the screen there. But tonight we have the privilege of speaking with Dr. T. Neill. She's a multiple award-winning, internationally acclaimed playwright. The list of awards in her repertoire is really too long to share tonight, but two include a very renowned award, Edward Albee Award. She's also received a Siena College International Play Award. She's earned an international residency at the Royal Court Theatre in London. And she's was offered a Winston Churchill Fellowship as well. She's been nominated for the Griffin Award, the Lewis Essen Prize, the Australian Writers Guild Award. She's also taught script writing and dramatic structure for many, many years, including at New York University, New York Siena College, and Melbourne University. In addition to her academic work, Dr. O'Neill has written plays for the Melbourne Theatre Company, the Sydney Theatre Company, Playbox, Theatre at Risk, and we'll talk about her upcoming play that is soon to be released. I've also known T personally for several years, which has been a real privilege. In addition to being a brilliant writer and a playwright and a creative thinker, she is also very passionate about helping people, and she really has a heart of gold. She runs an equine therapy center, which helps lots of people who struggle with disabilities to find joy and healing by interacting with horses. Probably right outside T's window right now are a few horses. Unfortunately, they couldn't join her in the actual webinar, but we'll talk about her equine therapy programs as well. But she's coming to us tonight from the Yarra Valley in Australia, in what is, I imagine, to be a very beautiful part of the country. Dr. O'Neill's new book, Writing the Biographical Drama, is, to the best of our knowledge, the only book that is designed to help screenwriters and playwrights develop scripts that are based on the lives of real people. And that presents a whole new set of dynamics that fictional plays and films don't really require. In addition to have a PhD in this area, she's written numerous biographical plays that have been performed in major theaters all over the world. So tonight, we really have a privilege to learn a lot from T and get to know her more. And we also are going to save some time for you to submit some questions. So don't be shy. Feel free to use the Q&A button that you should see on your screen and submit it that way rather than the chat. And that'll help us to keep track of your questions. And we'll field as many as we can tonight. But again, don't be shy. So with that, T, why don't we get started? Thanks again for being with us. Might be able to get hey there, what's the name of the horse there in the background?
There we go. This is Peggy. And I don't know if you can see Peggy's baby at the back.
We can't see that one.
Peggy. Yeah, Peggy's come to say hello.
That's great. That's great. Well, we're going to talk about horses too, but for now, let's talk about the book. You've given most of your career, both as a playwright and a scholar, to the theater and film genre of biographical dramas. So maybe you can briefly explain what is a biographical drama. It's probably fairly obvious to most people, but what is that, and what inspired you to develop your career in that direction?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say hello to everybody that's come. I'm very stoked that everybody is coming to watch this. Um, yeah, look, it was coming up to about 10 years ago. I wrote my first biographical drama, and it was a commission. And I was I was asked to write about a footballer, and I was immediately taken with because he was a person that loomed large in my childhood. He was probably one of the first sports stars in Australia. So I used to watch him a lot on television as a child, and I came from a big football loving family, and I played football myself when I was a youngster. So it was this sort of excitement that I got from being asked to write this play, but also trepidation because I'd only written plays that were from my imagination. So I went to look to see, I really looked for help and looked to see if there were manuals or something out there that could sort of help guide me in this particular job that I'd been asked to do. And I could find nothing really out there. So I decided, well, I'll have to be the help that
Mm.
that I need to create this drama. So I'd also been teaching I'd been at Playwright in residence in a lot of countries around the world, in universities and writing centres, and I because of this I had always been looking to do a PhD. So I thought, well, this is a wonderful subject. To
Mm.
write a PhD on how to write a biographical drama. So I was sort of double dipping, really. I had to write the play, but I got to write a PhD along with it. And it was a wonderful experience. I got to interview some amazing people from around the world because I realized, well, let's go and see people who have written biographical dramas, and especially ones that I've admired, and they've got it to work. So let's see what their process was. And then I also managed to make a lot of notes on what my process was, what problems and possibilities were coming up for me as I was writing this biographical drama. So it was a very rich 3 or 4 years writing that PhD, doing the research, really digging in deep into what the difference is between writing something that is about a real person, compared to something that you've created from your imagination. A lot of things came up, so it was a rich time, and yeah, I was so pleased to have chosen this subject, and then to go on to write the manual and have you publish it. It's been
Right,
wonderful.
right. Yeah. Um, so, it's interesting. I think maybe you could describe it. I think biographical dramas, this genre, is extremely popular in both film and stage plays. I think probably my guess is that more people are familiar with the film industry of biographical dramas or TV series, things like The Crown or Victoria, or things like that that are perhaps more reach a wider audience than stage plays. But what is it about you've said that the biographical this genre is really one of the most lucrative and culturally powerful genres in both industries. What is it? What are the elements of a biographical drama, do you think, that are really that make them so culturally influential as well as very popular and lucrative?
Yes. Well, yeah, but first of all, I when I did the statistics, I saw that about 20 to 30% of both theatre seasons and cinema seasons were about films that were based on someone's life or real events. So that intrigued me. But what was also interesting was that the percentage was even higher of the ones that won awards and did higher box office. So they are, yeah, as you say, very, very popular. Um, I think there's a lot of reasons why we go and see a biographical drama. A lot of it, of course, is we're often curious about that person. I remember one scholar saying that that we are the only species that's very, very interested in other people's lives. Though I kind of have to dispute that living on a farm, because when I go out into the paddocks, all the animals are very interested in what I'm doing. Especially my cows. I've got 5 steers. They're just always chasing me, going, "What do you do? What do you do?" So we all, even animals, we're all really interested in other people's lives. I mean, you just got to look at magazines, and celebrity gossip and so on. There's the dark side to it as well. But I think some of it is to do with, if we just look at us as ancient people, when we were sitting around campfires a lot, we'd listen to stories because it educated us. It would, like the hunters would talk about a hunt that they were on, and the young men would start to learn about hunting. We've even seen that in science as well. There's like a sports person who visualizes what they're going to do with their game, their golf game or soccer. That's incredibly helpful. So there's something about watching a biographical drama that kind of helps us live our own life. We're watching other people go through sometimes generally quite extreme events. And it just helps us to see how we perhaps will cope with the stresses and strains of our life. And I also think that it's got this wonderful thing of creating empathy. There's you're watching what you see somebody dealing with quite often, they have to go through everything that we're going to have to go through, the grief, the loss, but also, there's also warnings inside a lot of biographical drama about, where buyer beware of what the choices that someone's made that's ended up the consequences of those choices. So there's an education part of it, but there's also, of course, an entertainment part of it. It's really fascinating to watch what other people, what they've gone through. But there's also, I think, the writer's take is always fascinating as well. What the writer decided. Well, that's what I find very fascinating. Every time I look at a biodrama, I'm always going, "That's an interesting choice. What slice of their life you chose to dramatize?" I think that's also very fascinating.
Right. Could you describe one of your favorite biographical dramas, either in play or film, and why is one of your favorites? Is that, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
yeah,
so
it
many
is.
out there.
It does. Because I've got a really good friend, and we watch a lot of biographical dramas, and we pull them all apart. So I've got so many in my head, I tell you.
Right.
But I knew you were going to ask this question, so I thought back. I mean, when it comes to plays, I think it still has to be Amadeus. It's a
Oh, huh.
1980 play, but
Oh,
it's wonderful. I love he took a little bit of history and he completely distorted it, which you
right.
can do when the characters are over 100 years old. But there is something. I mean, it is about the themes of jealousy is very big in Amadeus. So it's about Salieri and Amadeus, and Salieri recognizing that Amadeus is a genius, and that Salieri is compared to Amadeus a mediocre musician, and so he wants to destroy him. So that's fascinating, and so it's also Schaeffer's use of music and showing us where I love the area of showing. I mean, I'm fascinated with it because it is about the creative process. You watch Amadeus as he creates this beautiful music, and then you see the effect it has on Salieri,
Yeah.
and you watch, you watch
I,
evil
I have to
taking
admit
place.
that,
Sorry, what did you say, Glenn?
yeah. Uh,
Yeah. So
Yeah, I
that would be
think
my.
right.
Yeah.
We have a question that came in. Um,
Okay.
he's wondering if part of the power of a biography is that truth is stranger than fiction. Uh, that the fact that it has happened gives us permission to go places that pure merit narrative might make you shy away from. It's a great question.
It is. It's absolutely a great question. Yes. Yeah. And it can be tricky because there's people can not necessarily believe it when you tell a story that perhaps hasn't been told because it is stranger than fiction. Um, but that's another reason why we should. We should write these stories so we can see that very strange things do happen. You can get down inside a true story and really show the events that perhaps are being obscured or haven't been shown. Like when I think of all the President's Men, that brought out all the details of how they brought down a president.
Mm.
There's yeah, so absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Um,
find those stories that are stranger than fiction.
yeah. One of the things, we worked together with you, our graphic designer in England, James Clark, designed a cover that actually won an award for cover design. But there's a lot that cover image really captures a lot, I think, of the dynamics that you as a writer go through when writing in this genre. It's kind of has the impressionistic painting strokes, but there's also this person that is really there. And maybe you can describe a little bit, how the cover design reflects the nature of that interaction between your impressions and the true person.
Yeah, well, in my research, I started looking at portrait painters. So it's really quite beautiful that James made that cover for the book. And I looked at Lucian Freud, and I looked at all his portrait paintings, and every one of them, you can see him in there, especially if you have a look at a picture of Lucian Freud at the time he painted the Queen of England. It
Mm.
really is. He's inside the Queen of England. And I found that fascinating because, of course, that is what happens when you write a biographical drama. It's you inside this person, that it's your take on this person's life. And yeah, so I found that fascinating. So it was beautiful that he brought that out in because it is in a way, a biographical drama is much more closer to a portrait painter than, say, a journalist or a historian, because we do take elements of their life and then we create something else from it. We create a drama from that, another
Mm.
story that's it comes from the facts, so we're using our brain, but it also comes from the heart because and our limbic system, because we're also concerned with emotion. It's about how we can make the facts into a dramatic experience. So
Mm.
I think that's why it's fascinating to have a look at portrait paintings and then have a and then the cover does that. It brings out this woman, but it also abstracts it out into a painting. It's
Mm.
quite
Mm.
beautiful.
Um, your your book has a really good chapter early in the book, designed to kind of help writers consider their own personal biases and their ethical responsibilities in portraying this person. You just described how you, as the author, the scriptwriter, begins to bring your own person, your own perceptions of that person, and the choices about what to portray and what not to portray, and you're overlapping that with the actual facts of the story. And so I think it's beautiful the way you encourage writers very early in the process to take a stop and think about their own personal biases that they might have, and then their ethical responsibilities. Maybe you can describe that a little more, flesh that out a little more, why that is so important for authors to take stock of themselves.
Yes, yes. Well, I did. I know I quoted Sam Smiley quite a bit. He's a wonderful playwriting teacher. And he would always say that you need to look at yourself, your own, what you believe is important in life, what you see needs, what is the driving force with what you want to write about, what you want to shape, and so on. But when there's sort of a double edge, when you're looking at a real life, so you also want to look at what drove that person, and see where. And a lot of the time that you are attracted to writing about that person because there's something about their life that helps you understand your own life. And I cite that with when I wrote my first biodrama, Barassi. I was interested in how somebody who wasn't a natural sportsman became one of the greatest stars of his time through sheer ambition and determination and not letting anything stop him. And I found that because I know that it is a very tough industry, the football industry, just like the theatre industry. You need to be determined, you need to have ambition, and you need to like, he would practice and practice, and you need to know a lot more about, you need to really have a lot of determination as well when you're a theatre artist. But you need to go beyond that into making sure that you're not carrying bias, your own bias around with you, too, because there might be areas that you don't look at about your subject, or about the antagonists that are also, because it's there's you're writing not just about one person, you're writing about their life, so you're also writing about other real people that are involved there. So you really do need to look at your biases. I mean, I think what's really fascinating was I sort of grew up in the Bechdel test era, where they looked at films of the time that didn't pass the Bechdel test, which was basically if it didn't have one scene, just one scene with two women in it talking about something other than a man, and a lot of films, something like 90% through the 90s, so just failed this test. So and some of the films written by women were failing the test. So the bias was very, very strong, and that's changed now. We can see a lot more stories with women as central characters, not talking about men all the time. But I found that absolutely fascinating. That because what was interesting is the films that did pass the Bechdel test often did very well at the box office. So it's kind of important to have, to really look under the hood of your own car and really check out what's going on there.
Right.
So it's a much more well-rounded character, but not just your protagonist, but all the characters in your screenplay or your play too. That you've widened, you have a good knowledge of yourself and where you lean towards, so you can sort of widen your perspective. I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah. One of the things I think is fascinating, I mean, you do a lot of interviews with, you did a lot of personal interviews with some of the most renowned playwrights and screenwriters in the industry to help develop the book. And one of those people was Jose Rivera, who actually endorsed the book. He was nominated for an Academy Award for his screenplay of Che Guevara. the South American activist. That film was The Motorcycle Diaries. But you capture a couple of people where a lot of times you start to address a person and they're caught up in a political, cultural moment that often puts you as the author in some very difficult choices to make about these things. And I wonder if you could read an excerpt that kind of goes into that a little more. You might want to add a little context to that.
Yeah.
But to me, that was a fascinating whole part. I learned so much from just reading the book. You don't realize where the writer can end up stepping into some difficult situations.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and it does. I talk about that. It takes a lot of audacity to write about another person. So you do need to make sure that you've checked your biases and you're willing to deal with the pressure. But these particular writers I'm going to read about, they were under quite a bit of pressure. So I'll read this excerpt. Compared to scholars and journalists, biodramatists have more freedom to arrange facts in ways that increase drama, add excitement, and provide deeper insight. But with that freedom comes tremendous difficulty and risk. If you take liberty with some details, purists might get upset, but there can be an even greater danger for the dramatist. Jose Rivera told me, when the Motorcycle Diaries came out, the producers strongly suggested I get an unlisted number because they were certain that the right-wing Cuban community in Miami would literally come after me. Thankfully, Rivera told me, that never happened. But a conservative screenwriter was so appalled by Rivera's film that he told him, "You have blood on your hands." Playwright Nick Stimpson's musical biographical drama about Janusz Korczak required guards with machine guns to protect the production crew. I asked Stimpson whether the creative writing process would have changed if he had known ahead of time that his work would cause so much risk. He answered, "No, I don't think it would have. I think Korczak was the only piece I've ever written that I actually felt like this is what I was meant to do." The commitment to write biographical stories, despite difficulty and danger, was a primary driving characteristic of these biodramatists.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
You almost think that maybe someday somebody's going to have to write a biodrama about like Nick Stimpson or Jose Rivera and the dangers of writing a biodrama.
No, absolutely. Yes, yes. No, it is. And I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of biodramas we watch because we are watching people do incredibly brave things. Like bravery is like when I think of Catherine Gunn in Official Secrets, just watching her bravery through that. And whistleblowers are always fascinating subjects because of that, because we think, could we have the guts to do that?
Yeah.
Could we do this?
Maybe on that point, there's obviously many people in the world have fascinating life stories. I mean, actually, I think every person in the world has, because they're a valuable human being, they have a valuable human story. But as you say in your book, not everyone's life story, even a very famous person, will necessarily make a good subject for a biographical drama. Maybe how do you go about, or what would you recommend about going about selecting a main character, for...
Yeah,
I realize you have a whole chapter on this, right? So
yeah, I do. So just sum it up, but it is interesting. I mean, it's if you've like I talk about a friend of mine who's a screenwriter, and he's had an amazing life and a very successful life and written a lot of amazing works. But all he does is, of course, sit down on his ass and write. He's
Right.
a very stable person. He's got a lovely wife and all these kids, and there's not a lot of drama in his life, like to do his story. It is often about, we take an element that is very dramatic inside that we can watch. So it is about trying to find the shape of this person's life in that can be dramatic. So it's yeah, you do have to choose carefully. I mean, there's exceptions. Like sometimes it can be about somebody. Um, I mean, I think there's been films that are about a writer dealing with the fact that that they need to try and make drama out of something that's not particularly
Mm.
dramatic. I've seen a few shows that are about that. But it is about finding the story inside there, because you've got to take, and sometimes someone's life goes for 80 something years and you've got 90 minutes. So you've got to find how you can make that 90 minutes. You can keep people especially in a theatre, that they're sort of at the edge of their seat, or they're interested, they're leaning forward. So that means tension. So you've got to find what is the story, what's going to create that tension, keep people interested
Yeah.
throughout. So it's about finding those elements.
Yeah. You mentioned one of my favorite biographical dramas is Ford versus Ferrari, which is about the relationship between Carroll Shelby, the race car driver and race car manufacturer, and Ken Miles. And there's a tension between them, and there's a lot of tensions within himself, and a
Yeah.
tension with the cultures in which they live. There's like tensions everywhere. And
Yes. Yes.
so it seems like sometimes the best ones have these like layers of tensions in different directions. That's just my observation for whatever it's worth. But
Yes, yes, no, and in that particular film too, it was something quite lovely about. I mean, I talk a lot about this here on the farm with the horse herd. It was about two people who were very, very different, and that worked for them. The two
mm,
different characters,
mm,
how they could get, how they use their strengths, their differences, the two strengths combined created this, the way they could get the Ferrari in that race.
yeah,
They had one fellow who was sort of not, it just didn't really like people very much, loved cars, and his wife, and that's about all. A little on the spectrum, perhaps. And then the other character who had to charm his way to get the money to be able to get this car in the race. So that was really lovely too, where it shows how we work better if we work with different people, if we accept difference, but not only accept difference, see the power in difference. I loved that. I'm not that particularly interested in car racing, but I was really interested in the human element that was behind that. We're
right.
all important members of the herd, and we've
Yeah,
all got to look at each other's, where our differences can actually be our strengths in terms of coming together as a group. I thought that was
yeah.
lovely in that film.
You know, we'll get to some questions next, but I would like to just make one thing, a very personal observation about. I had the privilege of editing and publishing books by incredible people like T. O'Neill, and I get to learn from some of the best scholars in the world. And but it's interesting. I'm never going to write about a theater or I'm not a playwright. I'm not a screenwriter, but I enjoyed the book so much as just a consumer of films, someone who loves films, because it helped me to learn how to understand the artwork that goes into these biographical dramas. So for me, even as a layperson, it was really a very enjoyable and beautiful read. It's an accessible book. But let's get to some questions. I think there are some really good ones here. One is, does it, when someone is still alive, does it make you more cautious when you write about them, as opposed to, say, Amadeus?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When they're alive, you got, when we talk about tension, we got tension. Yeah. When they're alive, yeah, you've got to watch the people pleaser in you. It can be, you can self-edit a bit too much when they are alive, but you do have a responsibility because they are alive. They're going to see it. I know that happened with Barassi because he was alive, but not only was he alive, but he was very loved. There was a lot of protection out there, and he was loved, and they also knew that he was frail. Like when I was writing it, he was in his 70s, and he had the beginnings of Alzheimer's. So I had to, yeah, I had to be careful, but I didn't want to make it hagiography. I didn't want to pull any punches either. So there is a tension between the two when someone is alive, and you better get your facts right if they're alive too. The facts in terms of what they actually did. But then, of course, you're going to have to use conjecture if it's conversations behind. You have to make that up. You have to do educated guesses on what was said when you were obviously not in the room. So yeah, there is tension that I mean, you can get, getting permission is great, but the permission can be taken away. There's something about unauthorized biography which gives you a lot more freedom. But if you do have permission, you often get a lot more support in terms of like I know that when Barassi came and saw the show, and then went on radio and raved about it, we got a surge in people coming to the show. So it, yeah, you do have to play with those tensions and
Right.
see if they're holding you back a little bit
Yeah.
too. I talk about that a little bit more in detail in the book as well, where you feel too much responsibility. So I think you've got two gods that you're having to serve, two masters, the
Yeah.
dramatic, you the drama, and then the real person.
Boy, incredible tension. I think making those kinds of decisions as you go along. Yeah, I mean, you're not doing a propaganda piece for, it's not public relations that you're doing, but finding that tension with being truthful and honest and respectful and so on. A related question also is, do you worry about what the subject's family will think of the work? The broader, this, what if the ideas of the person are very, and secondary, what if the ideas of the person are very different than your own?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it reminds me immediately of Joan Crawford when they did her biography a long time ago, and it wasn't flattering at all. Like there's this scene where she's beating her daughter, with wire coat hangers that I cannot forget. And of course, the other members of the family said she wasn't like that at all. But that was one daughter's perception of Joan that they showed. I think it was a lovely quote that I got from Jose Rivera with this. He said that he believed, because he knew that there'd be a lot of people who'd be upset by his rendition of Che Guevara, that it was another voice in a conversation. No, that's what you're supplying. You need to have confidence in that you've done your research, that you're not you're not telling any lies, but you're also, your master is drama. But yeah, you are just another voice in the conversation about this person.
Mm.
I
Mm.
do see, like with The Crown, it's very interesting. A lot of people are split by that because they're saying it's all made up, and so on. But I think that uh, that there's a lot of truth inside. The dramatic truth is interesting because it is about a family. It is about dealing with the pressures of that family. It is about what the media does to that family. There's so much you learn from watching something like The Crown, even if you're not particularly interested in the royal family. It does say a lot about the tensions that they have to go through. I mean, you stop
Mm.
envying anyone in the royal
Yeah.
family after watching The Crown.
Right. Well, the pay is not bad. I mean, there's
I
that,
don't
but
know. The pay might be good, but the price is far too high.
that's right. Another question is, do you find that it's easier for you to write about women than men? And um, yeah, so kind of looking at gender, ethnic things,
Mhm.
do you feel like it's easier for you to write about people who are uh, culturally and ethnically like you or different than you? It's an interesting
Look,
question.
that's a beautiful question, and it's a huge debate, isn't it, going on about who should write what and cultural appropriation and so on. I find that's always interesting. Yeah, it's going to be up to you ultimately. I think Peter Morgan was saying he's the guy who wrote The Crown, and a lot of other. He's written a lot of biographical dramas, some wonderful ones. Um, he talks about conscience. What he thinks he has a really good conscience. Um, you have to yeah, you have to look at your conscience. You also have to know that you're really stepping into their shoes. You're taking that responsibility quite seriously. And you are. And I think it was, again, Rivera who said, who am I if I were to live this life? If I had those parents, if I had that upbringing, if I lived in that era, if I was that gender, that race, and all the things that go with that in the social environment that they grew up in. Who am I? Yeah, and take that very seriously. But it also,
Mm.
at the same time, your imagination is you need to use your imagination. I mean, that's what imagination is, isn't it? Really,
Mm.
we're empathizing, we're deciding, what would that be like to be
Mm.
that person? So if you're taking it all seriously, then you're taking all that and you're taking that responsibility seriously, then you can also have a lot of fun with it too. And the payoff is beautiful. But yeah, I don't know if I particularly. I mean, I grew up. I have a lot of brothers, so I grew up with a lot of testosterone. So I don't find writing male characters. I mean, I'm very much at home with male characters. I find them fascinating, but also quite familiar, because of my upbringing. So I do use that as a resource. Um, yeah, so no, I do find people so fascinating. So I hope that I'm taking it seriously enough to be able to write other characters well.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, regardless.
We have one question I think we've kind of covered, but if you want to, let's honor the question. If you want to add a little something,
Yeah, sure.
is this is writing a biographical drama always about portraying a truth? And then, you know, how do you? So it's kind of going into that question of the overlap between your own artistic license to adapt the play, but still maintaining connection to the factual elements. If you, we've kind of touched on it a little bit. Maybe you can elaborate a little more.
Yes, yes. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I've talked a lot about the dramatic truth. It's something may not have happened, but because of the series of events that you put around it, that it just feels right dramatically. It sort of sums up the person in some way, and you feel very satisfied. I mean, I haven't asked Jose this, but I felt when I was watching the Motorcycle Diaries, just towards the end, there's a moment when Che Guevara decides to sort of leave the safety of a hospital and go and swim across, even though he's got asthma, to swim across this river to the leper colony. And it's just this beautiful moment, which sort of it encapsulates the youthful, man who goes on to become the revolutionary. And I don't know if that did happen, but it was something that it was so satisfying dramatically to include that moment where you watch him take his clothes off and jump in and, with this asthma, swim across the river to the leper colony. So if you can find those moments that are dramatically truthful, then audiences go away with a bigger truth than if you stuck merely to the facts. No, I'm endlessly interested in finding what that is. It's something about, oh yeah, that's what that's what that's what he was. That represents him. And
Yeah.
that's interesting. That moment that kind of reveals him more
Mm.
than statistics or a
Right.
book on his history or a biography, straight sort of
Right.
prose biography. We feel it, we watch it, we've gone, our limbic system's gone with him over that river.
Yeah.
That's when it's yeah, it's so powerful.
Right. Well, interesting. We actually have a question from Jose Rivera.
Oh
Um,
wow, he's here.
yeah.
Hello.
So that's fun. And so this is a hard question that's coming from him. He says, a novelist friend of mine once told me you should write as if everyone you know is dead. What do you think of this?
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it still doesn't get you off the hook, though, even if everybody is dead. I mean, even if you were writing, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of flack about Amadeus because it was all lies. He wasn't poisoned, he died of rheumatic fever, and he was good friends with Salieri. But I love that. I love what he's just said because there is a point where yes, you need freedom. As a writer, you need the freedom to make um, to to be confident in your own story, your own take. Once you've done your bias check, you've really had a good look under the hood of yourself, and you've researched this person thoroughly. Yeah, then I think that's kind of a good rule to then go into and say, hey, this is my take on this story. I mean, I interviewed Polly Teal, who wrote about the Brontes, and she knew that a lot of people would know very much. They know so much about the Brontes in Britain. And then I also interviewed Willie Russell, who wrote about the Beatles, and he's from Liverpool. And the first show was in Liverpool, so everybody knows in Liverpool. I mean, everybody knows about the Beatles. So they constructed an idea of having the beginning of the play where the actors step out and get into their roles first and talk about the costumes they had to wear as the Bronte sisters, and how could you go across the moors wearing this and these shoes and so on. So they set it up so there was a sense of, yeah, this is my take on this. And also Willie Russell did that he had the first Beatles song was sung by a woman. So immediately audiences were told, we're not going to pretend to be the Beatles here. This is something else. This is the author's take, so you could set it up. But Yeah, I do think there is a point where it would be good to just decide everybody is long dead.
Yeah.
And so there.
um, that's great. One maybe just time for one or two more questions. I think we try not to go too long tonight. But are most plays or films of this kind presented in a realistic way, as opposed to, say, something that is more abstract and experimental? So I think they're touching on not just the script itself, but maybe touching on the production
Mm.
of that and what that is. So that's an interesting question.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it's why I kind of like theatre, because theatre, there's a lot more abstraction allowed in theatre. It's sort of demanded to a certain extent because we're all sort of locked in one room and we're using sort of lighting and set, and the restrictions allow this kind of abstractness. We believe we're in an apartment building, or we believe we're in a shopping centre with just one prop or something. There's something wonderful about that. But while film often does become more realistic with biographical dramas, I have noticed. Saying that, there are wonderful exceptions like Glenn Gould's, the biography on Glenn Gould. Um, but that, yeah, but I mean, I think if you're writing plays, especially, you you can you have a lot more scope to to be more abstract. A lot of plays are often someone's at their deathbed and they're dreaming about their life and they're meeting characters from their past. I know Stoppard does that a lot, and Carol Churchill does that a lot. So there's a lot more scope for that in theatre, I think. Um, but but absolutely, you can do that in film as well. It really depends. But I have noticed that there's a lot more realistic approaches when it comes to cinema. While us playwrights, we can have more fun.
Yeah. Well, think maybe I'll just ask you one other question. You can talk a little bit about your current work and what is happening for you creatively right now. And my understanding is that overlaps quite a bit with horses. So I'll let you talk about this. This is pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Well, my latest play, it's not a biographical play. Well, it's sort of, I mean, it is. I think that the book can also help people who are writing plays from the imagination, because sometimes it can be really helpful to use a real person as a sort of grounding cord down into your characters too. So your character might be shaped and given some possibilities through basing it on somebody, your personality that you do know too. But my latest play is called The Horse's Mouth, and it is about a horse. It is about it's about an equestrian rider who she's sort of an unlikely equestrian, and that she was a foster kid. She had a pretty rough childhood, and she managed to get to the top in one of the poshest sports there is, which is equestrian. And then when a horse has a breakdown, he bucks her off in a very high profile dressage tests. The internet goes wild believing she's been cruel to this horse, and she has to work with an equine behaviorist to prove that she loves her horse, and that they've got to improve their relationship before she's allowed to perform on her horse again in the Olympic Games. So it's yeah, I'm fascinated with that, because what's really interesting, when I did my PhD on creativity, I talked a lot about flow, and I looked at the science of creative flow. And what we need to do is we've kind of got to allow our prefrontal cortex to kind of go to sleep and just be in touch with our limbic system and just write. Oh, we've got another horse at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
gate here.
Who's that?
This is Jack. You had Peggy the first. This is
We had
Jack. So
Peggy. This is Jack.
Peggy's partner, Jack. Jack's is a huge hit here at the Equine Therapy Fund. You know, he's quite
I love
famous.
it.
He really does. But they're in, like, at the moment, he's in totally present tense. He's not thinking about the past or the future. He doesn't have any emails that he or bills to pay. He's not thinking about anything else. He's really present. And that's what we need to be as writers when we're creating our work. We need to be in this sort of present tense. So I am fascinated with how equine therapy, which is what we do here, can help people with their creativity. They can, because if you've got a place where you're really feeling sovereign and confident, and you're feeling safe, a lot of it's to do with safety, then you can kind of switch off the world and get right into your present tense. And horses can kind of lead us the way, and nature itself can lead us there. I'm sort of, so I've got my play, The Horse's Mouth, but I'm also thinking of now, or I'm notes, because I want to, not a lot of note taking about how equine therapy can help us in our creative lives and to be a little bit more creative, or a lot more creative.
Wow, fascinating. Sounds brilliant. It's so fun to see the horses. They really are. That's like really cool.
Yeah, I'm blessed. I really am. I've got 7 amazing horses. All rescue. They're from the
So,
racing industry or the
well,
breeding
T,
industry.
so we're having a little bit of breakup on the thing, but we're okay now. I think so. We're really looking forward to, what is your most recent play that was showing at La Mama?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was Yelling Bow. And that was, I mean, again, not a biographical play, but in a sense I mean, they were based on true characters. Everything that happened, it was about a refugee who was living under a false identity in Australia. And it looked at the ethical dilemmas when she is going to be outed as living under, and in Australia, for many years, there was a lot of discussion about asylum seekers and refugees here, not in a good way. So I worked with asylum seekers in Ireland, and I really got to know their lives and their struggles and what they really had to deal with. And I got to notice firsthand a lot of racism. So it was the play was based all on their stories. So I did use a lot of biographical elements, even though it was fictional in the end. But what had happened to that particular, and my central character, who was pretending to be an Aussie, it was always like, what is it to be an Aussie? And she was more Aussie than most Australians, but she was living under a false identity. So it was I brought a lot of biographical elements into her character. But yeah, that was we had a sellout season.
Yes.
Called Yellingbo, which is an Aboriginal word that means today.